Welcome to Brutally Anna, a podcast about finding love, losing love, and all the things we think about but don't talk about enough. I'm your host, Anna Kai, aka maybe both across social media, here to remind you that life can be beautiful even when it's freaking brutal. So we were first introduced to Kaitlin Reagan on YouTube over 6 years ago, and now she's amassed a following of almost 4 million followers across TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And while she's mostly known for her uppy personality and Brooklyn twang, Kaitlin's positivity stems from a lifetime of struggle and loss. Here to remind us all that we are not what happens to us, we are what we decide to do next is Kaitlin. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, what an intro. Thank you for having me. Can I bring you everywhere with me?
Dude, you are such an inspiration to me. We were just talking about this before we started rolling. We don't do small talk.
No.
So I'm just going to get right into it, all right? I went back. I stalked you hardcore. I went back to your first YouTube video you ever posted. It's like 31 fun facts about me, and some were very much not fun. You said you don't have a great relationship with your father, or at least you didn't 6 years ago. What was your upbringing like? I assume your parents were divorced, given how you've talked about him. You didn't have a great father figure in your life, so who was the parental figure? Was it your mom? Was it somebody else?
So I was raised with my mom and grandma.
Okay.
My mom met my dad.
That's why you're a girl's girl.
I am such a girl's girl, literally. My mom and my dad, they did long distance at like a summer camp. And she always tells me to this day, never do long distance because it's really hard to like grasp who somebody is. She rushed into this marriage and she got married, moved to Pennsylvania because that's where he was from. And before I was even 1 year old, they got divorced. He just was not ready to be married or a parent. Even to this day, when I ask him, I'm like, why? He's like, I just wasn't ready. And I'm like, that sucks because you made the decision, you know? Like, it sucks, but at least you acknowledge that you weren't ready. Like, that's nice to know.
Were they really young? You said
they were
summer camp.
Yeah, I know. Weird, but 25, 26.
Oh, so they were camp counselors.
I don't know what they were doing.
Okay, I was honestly like, were they at summer camp for 25-year-olds?
Yeah.
I was like, were they like 12 when they
I know,
met?
literally. It was weird.
Okay.
Some sort of like summer, I don't know if it's like a camp or like
a program or something.
Where all the like people her age would go. It was like something fun upstate. She just kept telling him after they got married and they had me, hey, like you're not coming home and you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing as a father or as a husband. I'm going to pick up and leave, you know? Okay. And she did because he just wouldn't listen. And for majority of my life, from age 1 to about 12, I really didn't see him much. Because
did he stay in Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
And so she moved you to Brooklyn. Is she from Brooklyn? Okay. So she was like, I'm going to be close to family.
Yeah.
If I'm going to do this alone, I got to be near my mom.
Literally. She would try and have him see me as per like a divorce. And I think that's how it goes. Like, it's
you
like
have
by
to.
law. Right.
Share custody.
Literally. So I would go there to my dad and I would come back and I was so dirty. Like my fingernails were black. Like I just was hungry. You know, I would come back and tell her these stories and she was like, okay, we're going back to court and we're going to discuss that like this might not be like safe.
Wait, that's horrifying. You were hungry and dirty.
Hungry.
Your basic needs were not being met with you. Do you remember that as a kid or do you only remember that because she tells you these stories now? Like, do you actually physically remember like being with your dad and like, I don't have anything to eat?
Yeah, I do remember. And I never really understood why. It's not like he was eating or my stepmom was eating and I just wasn't. Like nobody was eating. And I'm like, why is nobody hungry? You know, like I was just confused because I was scared to say like, hi, I'm hungry. Can somebody feed me? Yeah. I was just hoping like as humans, like at some point food would be offered. And I was so confused. But as I grew older, I realized that drugs was a big problem. And this is where
that was my next question. I was like, that's why nobody's hungry. Yeah. So your father was addicted? Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I actually like briefly just spoke about it online recently, but I never really talked too much about it, but so I'll never really truly understand what drugs, you know, and how often, but my dad and my stepmom and a lot of my dad's side of the family, his sisters are still to this day addicted to drugs. They're very like functionable drug addicts. Like I feel like if you were to meet them, like you'd be like, I'm torn if they're on drugs.
Right. It's not like blatantly obvious.
It's not blatantly obvious. I wish that, because I've asked him a couple times, like, hey, will this ever get better? Will you ever fix this? Like recently too. And he always just says that he's not on drugs. So I can't get like the proper truth. And I think that's hard because like you get to an age where you're like, this is so the truth. And like you keep
know
lying.
better now.
I know better now.
Yeah.
I would love if you at the very least acknowledge it to me so maybe I can help.
Right.
Like, is there something that I could do to make this better for you? Because he's also like somebody that is depressed. So I always tell him, I'm like, where is this coming from? And he can't understand himself because he's never sitting with his own thoughts because he's constantly being,
right,
you know, taking something to, I guess, forget everything that's going on.
Right.
I don't really understand the full extent, but what I do know is that I have a brother. He is my half brother. And that is why I even have a relationship with my dad at this point because I love my half brother. We have the same dad, different moms. And
he's younger or older?
He's 21.
He's 21. Okay.
So,
so you're similar in age.
5 years apart. And I just remember at around like 12, 13, like kind of like being like that mom figure. So when I got older and I was allowed to go back because I would go see my dad's mom, so my grandma.
Okay.
I would be like, let me cook for him because I knew he was hungry as well. So, you know.
So you started becoming the parent.
Right. So to this point, when we got older and we had phones, my brother would call me and we got so close. And when he got his license, he would drive to come down to New York and see me. And I remember one day we were sitting down and he's like, you know, the drive isn't that bad. Like I used to ask dad all the time, like, why don't we ever see Kaitlin? I want to see my sister. And you say it's so far, but it's not.
No,
it's not. It's really not. And he's like, you know, all along I thought that it was because of justified reasons, but like this is kind of messed up because it wasn't justified. Like you just didn't want to go.
Right. Exactly.
So
wait, did he grow up in the house with your dad?
Mm-hmm.
So your dad was his primary caretaker, whereas like your mom was yours.
Well, so we have different moms. So he's my half brother.
Right. No, exactly.
So,
but his mom didn't take custody of him?
Well, she lived in the house. It was them three. But she was also doing drugs as well.
Okay. So your mom really was separate from that. Do you ever worry? Because I know a lot of children who have addiction in the family worry about it for themselves. Like, do you ever worry about, like, you drink casually? I mean, I've been, you know, that's how we met. We met at events and you seem to handle yourself fine. Is that something you struggle with or worry about, or did you just not get that gene? It is genetic, I think.
Yeah, you're right. I think for me, I definitely learned as I got older, because we're constantly learning about ourselves, that I do have an addictive personality. So in an ideal world, if I lost control, I could get addicted to anything that I take, like alcohol or maybe smoking a vape.
Yeah.
But acknowledging the person that I am, I can take control of my life and say, okay, like I know this could happen, so let me be on top of it. I think that when my brother being a little bit younger, 21, he's like having his party phase, the girls, I get worried for him.
Right.
Because again, like my mom took me away, so it was a little bit of a different situation, but for him, this is kind of the norm, and I worry for that.
Your mom never struggled with any of that?
No, thankfully. And I think that's why she like was like, holy shit, like the long distance, because she had no, like I said, functionable drug addicts. Like I was even like, how would you not, like, I feel like I'm so good at character. How did you not know?
How did you pick up on
what the hell happened? I'm so disappointed. You're horrible judgment. Horrible, Allison. But she was like, I swear. I wasn't there for it. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt, but.
Wait, you grew up very, very quickly, whereas I think the average, you know, I know when I was 24, 25, if you feel a sense of security and the age at which your brother is at right now, you feel invincible. You're like, nothing can touch me. I can do whatever. You know, that's why people experiment so much in their 20s. And you saw what can happen when shit goes awry. And so you have a very mature presence. Life just handed a lot of stuff to you that I think you were probably, too young to have to handle.
Yeah.
Has your relationship with your dad changed now that you're an adult? And, you know, obviously I'm sure he knows how successful you are now. What is your relationship with him like now? Do you drive to Pennsylvania?
So when Francesco passed away, and I know we're going to get into the whole story of Francesco.
Yeah.
He texted me and he was like, I heard about Francesco because he met him. I would bring Francesco there a couple times to see my brother, my grandma, my cousins. He said, I heard he passed away and I don't know much about you, but, you know, based off the fact that you were there till the very end, I'm really proud of you. And I read that text and I think for the first time I got true acknowledgement from him and it was really nice.
Yeah.
So I texted him back because when you're at rock bottom, like you don't have any more hate to give. You're just done. You're tapped. So I wrote back and I said, hey, listen, I really appreciate this text. And if you ever want to sit down and get some dinner, get some lunch, just want to let you know it's not too late.
I love
because
that.
I think he was scared. And to this day, he's very like a little bit on eggshells because I think he's scared. He's very scared of like rejection, which is really interesting. So I always try to go into having conversation with him, like making him feel very safe. Like I'm not going to run. I know that you messed up, but it's okay. Like, let's try. After that, he didn't necessarily take me up on a dinner opportunity, but I would go down during the summer to see everybody and he would come up to me and have a little conversation like, hey, how's everything going? And I saw that like I would sit down and like pick his brain, he'd pick mine, and we were naturally like kind of falling into line. And recently one day I said, hey, like I'm gonna leave Pennsylvania, but when I get back to New York, you think I could get a text? How you doing? Maybe like once a week, a little check-in. Like that's how I like kind of like play with him. Like I joke. I like try to like loosen up and make him feel loosened up. And he's like, okay. So ever since then, I get like my sporadic text, like, how is everything? I heard I just went on a talk show recently. How was the talk show? I got to watch it. You know, he's trying. That's all I can ask at this point.
But you know what? It's also great because I think it's almost nice that he has humility about where he came from because it shows that he's not like a sociopath and he's like, oh, you know, I deserve to be in your life. Because there are parents like that who totally drop off the face of the earth and they come back and they expect like they should have a relationship, like they're entitled to a relationship. And I think what's nice about your dad is that he knows, he fully is aware. And I think that's why it's so nice that you are giving him permission to be in your life because the ball really is in your court. You know, I think humor unites us all. So it's great that like you're using humor as a vessel to connect with him. But I think by doing that, you've given him the opportunity to be like, you know what, she does want me in her life. I'm not intruding because at this stage, I'm not entitled to be in her life. I didn't raise her. So I think it's a good thing in a way, you know, if we want to reframe it like that. He fucked up when he was younger. We all do. Some of us less than others. In that video of yours, you were talking about how one of the most traumatizing moments for you as a kid was he was supposed to come spend the day with you. I think it was at Christmas, was it? And you waited all day for him and he never came.
Yeah.
Like,
that happened a lot.
That wasn't just the one time.
It was a lot. And it's interesting because till this day, I struggle with not feeling like enough. I don't know, in my everyday life. And I always like, what is going on? Because like I've proven to myself, like I do such great things. Where is this coming from? And my therapist like helped me kind of realize like, well, when you're waiting by a window for somebody and your people, like your two people that put you on this earth, they're not showing up for you.
Right.
You naturally as a kid, like, well, then I guess I wasn't enough for him to come. Right. And so this is still something to this day that like I'm battling, like learning, you know, how to like heal from that.
I mean, aren't we all? Yeah. It's like I was lucky enough to have great parents growing up and they were married and we didn't have a lot, but they raised me in a loving household. I actually grew up in Pennsylvania. Where in Pennsylvania?
Westchester?
Stop.
Is that where you're from?
I'm from Malvern.
Is that close? Like King of Prussia?
Yes, it's next door to Westchester.
Wow.
I grew up never really feeling like I belonged because now I think there's a lot more diversity in that area. But growing up, this is the 90s, and I never felt like I belonged because it's also a fairly affluent area. And I grew up with immigrant parents. So it's like interesting growing up in a very like wealthy area, but being the poorest kid there and not being able to keep up. I think that affected me so much. And like, you know, I think kids can be so mean. I couldn't afford all the nice clothes and like the stuff that other people did. And something as basic as, you know, my mom's Chinese. Chinese people don't bake. They cook, you know, they saute, but there's no culture of like baking as much. For your birthday, when you're 10, your mom bakes cupcakes for the class. Like my mom never did that.
Gotcha.
Not because she didn't want to or whatever, but like she would do other things that like, and she's showed me love in so many different ways. But when you're 10, you don't realize that like you have other things and you have love in other ways. Yeah. I just felt like I didn't belong. And so I think it's a similar thing to you where it's like for me, it wasn't coming from my parents, but it was coming from school. And so this leads me into my next question is like, I feel like such a huge part of the reason I, from a very young age, wanted to perform. I wanted to be on camera. I wanted to be in media and entertainment was because I felt so unseen that my need to be seen, it was like overcompensating. I was like, I need to be so special and so glittery that like nobody can ever ignore me again.
Yeah.
Everybody, I think, who decides to put themselves out there in this way is a little crazy. And I say that in a loving way. I'm like, what we do is kind of nuts, right?
Yeah.
And everybody has a point at which they're like, I'm going to risk a lot to try and do this. Like, what was that for you? Do you think it comes from the fact that you felt like you weren't seen as a kid?
I'm going to be honest. That was a great question because you have my brain going right now. I have never thought about it in that way, but I would say absolutely. I remember before social media was even a thing, like in elementary school, there was a thing called like Project Arts, and I always wanted to be a part of like being on stage and dancing and singing. And I was very not only like adamant about it, but like pushing for it. Like I was like going up to my teachers and say like, hey, like I want to do this and I want to do that. And they were like, this kid really, like someone give her a role. Like this is interesting, you know? So yeah.
Because you were a dancer for 16 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah. My dancing life, I would say, was not something that I loved. Wasn't really like the best experience for me, but definitely built me into who I am today.
Why was it not the best experience?
I had a best friend from my elementary school who I started off at this dance studio, and I don't know what happened, but I guess like my parents told her parents like she should come dance at the studio. She came to this dance studio and they loved her so much. She was so good at dancing and she just was better than me. And that's okay, but nobody held space that like that was hurtful, like that I wanted to be as good. And instead of using that as motivation, I fell victim and said like, I'm not a good dancer and like I'm gonna own that. So I wouldn't really practice. And like I spent all my life like dancing like in the shadows entirely. You know, I was also kind of bullied in the dance studio. There was times where the better dancers would all sit at a table and I wasn't necessarily welcome there. It was it was okay.
I think that's really tough too, especially in like performing arts. Some people are just like naturally better singers, dancers, actors, whatever. And like it's tough because I think human nature is to compare yourself. I think when you're that young, you don't have the skills to process like, hey, you know what? Even though she may be a more naturally gifted dancer than I am probably more naturally gifted than her in something else. And I should go do that thing instead of trying to be as good of a dancer as her. Like maybe you're better, you know, you're an amazing storyteller. Obviously now this is your career. Like that's your strength. But what is the quote? I'm probably going to butcher it. It's like, you know, if you're a fish and you spend your life trying to be a bird, you're going to think you're a failure. I'm fucking that up. But it's basically like if you spend your life believing that you should be something that you're not, you're never going to actually get good at what you're supposed to be getting good at.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously now you're here and like, you know, you are the after. But I think at the time it's like if you had been taught like, you should just try and be a dancer, you'd fail. Yeah. Because it's not what you were meant to do.
Right. Absolutely. My mom used to always say too, I'd come home and cry and she'd be like, it's always the guys in the back corner that one day. And now my dance studio would be like, hey, you want to come like do an event here? And I'm like, you guys forgot about me like my whole life. But
I know.
Maybe just because like I don't hold hate in my heart.
But you know, that's the thing. It's like you are so not bitter. Which is something I struggle with because I like to say, I mean, I've kind of owned it too. Like, I feel like part of my charm, if we can call it that, is like I'm angry. I've owned my anger.
I love that.
I'm angry at like the shit that's happened to me. I'm angry at the stuff that like, you know, from 25 years ago that I probably shouldn't be angry about and it comes up in therapy. How do you manage to grow up the way you did? And on top of that, you lost the love of your life at like 24, 25. How do you go through that and not just be angry?
I think when everything happens, I like take the situation. I'm like, what good can come from this? Even though that sounds so weird, like, what am I supposed to learn here? And what can I become from this? And instead of spending so much time falling victim of a situation, I would use it to make myself better. And I think that like the biggest revenge, because like sometimes like you hate the universe and you could be just mad at no one specific, just life. Mm-hmm. I feel like when you do good for yourself and you put all that energy towards becoming something greater than, you can't hate the world almost, you know? Like you're like, I'm so proud. All I can focus on is like what I can control, which is like me. So I think that's kind of like where I am. Like I think if I let everything happen to me and then just like completely lost control, never went to the gym again, looked in the mirror, was so disappointed with how I looked or just completely spiraled, then I would hold that hate, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think using it to become more than and acknowledging that like it doesn't end here like really helped me to just be at peace.
It reminds me of something you said in one of your videos that I always wonder what it would have been like growing up if I had somebody that pushed me, that would have told me I could do it because you didn't have a ton of people in your life that were like, hey, you can be a star one day, right? And I think what's so awesome is that you didn't have that. You didn't have the stage mom and you didn't even really have much of a dad and you did it anyways. And I think so often we become what we need. Your mom, was she supportive of your dreams? Obviously, she raised you as a single mother. So do you think a lot of your grit comes from her? What did she do to support you guys growing up?
I was just going to say, I think that my mom did a good job at making me feel like I could be a potential star. The thing that like I wish that my mom did better was that when I would finally accomplish one specific thing, instead of like helping me celebrate that win, she'd be like, but what about this?
The next thing.
Right.
The next thing.
And
By the way,
so-
so Asian. She's not Asian,
Really?
obviously. That's
Really?
like Asian mom or Asian parents are just like, oh, you got an A minus. It's a stereotype. It's like, you got an A minus. Why didn't you get an A plus?
Literally. Okay,
Right.
well, glad to know it's not
Yeah.
just me. So what ended up happening was that I spent majority of my life, even though I don't think she meant to, feeling not enough. Like not like I'm
Right.
never accomplishing anything because I wasn't taught to necessarily celebrate wins. I was taught to just, okay, you did this, that doesn't matter. There's a million other things on the list, you know? And
Right.
I think that's where she could have done a little bit better.
Do you talk to her about that?
Yes, but
It's so tough talking to our parents about
what they could have done better.
what they could have done better. I
They
don't.
don't like that.
And I just like, you
And
know.
I don't like it either, but you know.
And I think there's a part of me that it's like, you did such a good job that like, I don't know if I could have done better given the circumstances. Like
Yeah.
you think about you as her, it's like, would we have done much better? I mean, we're all just making it up as we go, right? So you have talked to her about it. And what
Yeah.
has she said?
She says, oh, but you knew what I meant. No, I didn't.
Yeah,
That's
I
why
know.
I'm here right now to
Yeah.
have this conversation. Oh, but it's always like, but this is what I did do. But I'm not talking about what you did because I've already acknowledged that in another breath. Let's talk about what you didn't. That's okay to
Yeah.
hold space for that. But there's such a defense mode. It's very hard to properly sit down and really be heard sometimes.
Do you want to be a mom? Do you want a family in the future?
I do.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
know what you're not going to do.
Yep.
Going forward. You have so much life experience behind you these days that like you're not going to repeat the same mistakes that your parents made at all.
No,
you know?
we stop the cycle here.
Yes, exactly. Generational trauma does not have to continue on. So it's interesting that you said that like your mom always wanted you to go after the next thing. And I think that's a common thing in our industry specifically is because we do such a public thing that everybody's always comparing to the next big thing. It's
So
like,
true.
okay, you got a win, but somebody else got
Yeah.
a bigger win. And you had said in your video that you care way too much about what other people think of you. I love that you admit that because I feel like that too.
Mm.
Do you still feel like that, though? It's been 6 years since you made that video. I know how I feel about the way other people perceive me and how that's shifted as I've grown up, but I'm curious to
Yeah.
know.
I've come such a long way. I think that at this point, what makes it different is that even though I may care to a certain degree, it won't stop me now. I'll still do what it is, knowing that this is going to cause some noise and be okay with the noise. Even though when I get the noise, I'm still going to sit with it and have to deal with it.
It still stings.
It still
You know.
stinks. I think that when you lose everything and like you really do inner work, you get a better grasp of who you are. And when you like look in the mirror and you're like, oh, this is who I am. But why is everyone else saying this then? I'm like, oh my God, they just don't know me. How
Yeah.
can anybody from a screen know me like the way
Yeah.
I know me? And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm letting people that proof that this is a fact don't know me. What am I doing here? I have to like walk in integrity and my dignity because that's the only way. Like, because you lose sight of that because you're like, sometimes I feel like when you're weak, and that's why it's so important to really do inner work and heal and be proud of who you are and confidence. If you don't know who you are, like you're going to think other people know better. And
If
it's
you don't know who
hard.
you are, you're going to become everybody else.
Everybody else.
I will never stop caring about, I applaud the people who say like, I genuinely don't care about what other people think about me. I'm like, that is so freeing. I was like, I do. I will always care, but I will never let it stop me. It's really hard because you realize like other people probably think you're crazy. And I had some people say some things to me. It's like, this is a hobby. Like, do you really want to be doing this? And so did you have any naysayers? And maybe they weren't like, hey, you're crazy, but you could just tell maybe they were not as supportive or thought you were crazy.
I would say that it wasn't necessarily where people thought I was crazy of what I was doing. It was how vulnerable I was online. Like, don't put your dirty laundry out there. Like, what are you doing? Like that part of it, like how vulnerable and how honest I am with everything that I've been through is what people say is like almost psychotic. So I'm like, am I insane? Or do I just have a passion to just show up to the world and really have these serious conversations and be okay with it? And as long as it's helping somebody, with everything that I've been through it all, what has made it just a little bit more worth it was the fact that there were so many people gaining some sort of something from what was going on. That, even for Francesco, he was like, I'm so happy at least that, number one, for me, I know I'm not alone. And number two, like, they don't feel alone. So like everything that we did, like this whole social media thing and like being so vulnerable just really gave us purpose.
Right. You're not just famous for no reason. You are actually helping people.
Yeah.
I feel like my audience helps me and I help them. It's a very symbiotic relationship. You sharing your whole life is so interesting because it's like, I wonder if it's like you could never share as much as you wanted with the people that you were supposed to be able to share everything with growing up. So you're like, I'm just going to lay it out there.
You are just blowing my mind today.
You were searching for a connection with your father.
God.
And like, in a way, I think you obviously are very close with your mom, but it's like you couldn't talk to them the way that you needed. And like, I wonder if so much of your desire right now to share is because you didn't have an outlet. I don't know. This is just like a hypothesis.
That's it.
Yeah.
That is it. I mean, wow. I even when I was younger, not so much anymore, like in my early 20s, like anywhere from like 19 to like 22, I had like friends in every angle, people coming in and out of my house. My mom was like, what is this, a frat house? Like so many friends. And she's like, what are you doing with all these people? And I just had like this passion to just gather as many people and be around as many people as I can. And my mom was like, do you ever want to be like alone or like maybe with one or two people? And I just needed all these people. And then when I got older and started to like understand like, okay, like there's some problems here with some of the people around me. This doesn't make sense. And I kind of got myself back to center and I lost all those people around me and I kind of found it from the outside world with social media.
Right.
So I'm still living out like that desire.
Yeah, you have everybody in your phone now.
Yeah.
And when your mom's asking you, do you ever just want to be alone? It's like, Mom, I grew up alone in my head, wanting to find connection. And that's why I'm here. You're the daughter of a single mom. I can't imagine things from a financial perspective were that easy for you guys growing up. Am I correct there to assume that?
Yeah. Okay, so we grew up and we lived in, it's so funny that you asked me that. And I think the reason why I was never really like so vocal about it is because everybody in my family is very like the mob. Like, oh, we don't talk money. I'm like, why not? How much money you got in your bank account?
That's a generational thing too. I think that's generational.
I'm like, I'm your kid. Why do I not know how much you got?
Right.
But I just knew that to be a competitive dancer was like X amount a month. I was a middle class kid. We lived in like a little apartment. I remember like my Christmas tree was a little tiny and I used to go to other people's houses and like they have like that beautiful big tree.
Right.
So I knew that I wasn't racking.
Right.
But I had what I needed where I never felt like I couldn't go on like a senior trip, for example. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I would say I was
very solidly middle class.
Yes.
But you knew, you were like, I got to make some money when I grow up if I want to live. I don't have like a trust fund or inheritance coming to me.
Yeah. If my mom was very content having just the, I guess like your average needs.
Her
like
basic needs fulfilled. Yes.
I'm like, no.
You're like, I like
so
my Chanel,
more.
honey.
Yeah. You know, like, because I went to college in Miami, like at Boca, which I was always in Miami, and I saw this lifestyle, and I'm like, I don't need all this. This is a little too much.
Miami is,
I was like,
everything
okay.
you
literally
over the top.
yachts, and I was like, okay. But I acknowledged that there's more to what I knew.
Right.
You know, and that if I didn't go away to college, I would have not known that.
You go from kind of zero to everything in social media, right? I think you're doing well now.
Yeah.
How do you budget? How do you handle your finances? Because I grew up very middle class too. I remember like having to learn how to open a 401k on my own, and nobody taught me about personal finance. I didn't realize like you can't, apparently you're not supposed to let cash just sit in a bank account.
I just learned that too.
Yeah, somebody was like, oh my God, no, you got to invest in it. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, it depreciates every year. And it was like just this mind-boggling thing to me because I was like, what do you mean I can't just put it in a savings account that's bearing 1% interest a year? They're like, inflation's what, 5% a year? I don't know. It's something crazy. So how did you learn how to handle your money? Have you learned? Should we talk about that?
Yeah, no. So I, like you said, I never had anyone to explain it to me. And I met somebody recently who actually started off that he wanted to take me out on a date.
Okay.
But
you're like, he's now my financial advisor.
He really is.
You're like, didn't work out that way, but he handles my money, which is also scary.
I know.
I'm joking.
No, literally.
Sorry, I'll let you talk.
No, it's okay. So we went on this date and he like owns like a bunch of places, and I wasn't into him romantically, and I communicated this to him, but I did tell him that like I think that he'd be like a great friend, and you know, I really like admire like where how much you've created for yourself. And he was really respectful of me not wanting a romantic relationship, although probably hoping that I would change my mind. Yeah. But he is the one that has said like make your 401k and like explain to me all the different ways to like not have to pay so much out on taxes each year.
You got a lot of business expenses.
Literally, a lot of business expenses for sure. You could pay out your personal account X amount a month and you don't have to pay taxes on that. Your 401k every year, put in X amount, you don't have to tax on that. So I'm fairly new to really learning how to like be smarter with my money. But up until this point, I've lived at home. And I actually am moving to the city soon.
That's so exciting.
I know. So this is going to be like big girl.
Did we sign a lease?
So I'm subleasing during the summer.
Okay, great.
Just to see this financial district.
I have lived in so many apartments in Fidei.
Okay,
that is amazing. I love Fidei. I think it's like a hidden, yes.
Okay,
and I would love to move back there.
And I just like the high buildings. I need some views,
I love new
windows.
You need the natural light for the videos. Oh my God, nothing beats the natural light from a high rise in this city. Nothing.
I'm a little bit weird. I always thought that I was good with change, but I don't really like it. And I know that's like normal, I think.
Just crazy because you've been through so much.
You would think I like
so much else that I'm like, it's way more traumatizing than like just moving to a nice apartment.
You know what? I think because of all the trauma, I've kept a couple things that like make me feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And like my home and like my surroundings and like being close to Francesco's family that's like 2 blocks down has been like has helped for so long that like at this point, because I've healed so much, I'm like, I'm ready to now take this next step. So I think that's why I'm a little bit scared, because I'm like, I know what I'm doing here. Like it's deeper than like taking that move.
Yeah.
So.
But you're excited too, right?
I am. And I love, the one thing I love about me is even though I'm scared of something, I'll still do it.
Yeah.
And that's what's most important.
And, you know, I think the best things in life come from when we're scared and excited at the same time. If you're just scared, it probably means you're about to do something really stupid, you know? But it's like,
I love that.
If it's a mixture of scared and excitement, it probably means something great is going to happen. There's actually a very small window in your life that you get to live alone. I only lived alone for 3 years, and then I met my husband, and then we moved in together. And so for you, you know, you've lived at home with your mom, and now you're moving out on your own. Who knows when you're going to meet the next person? So you're never going to go back in time and get this time back. So you should just really enjoy living alone while you can, because trust me, I love my husband, but my God, the way he will load a dishwasher, I am just like, what, you know, nothing is ever even when you find your person, you're like, the way you do shit around the house. I'm like, that's where you put that cup. The wine glass is where the coffee mugs are. I'm like, why would you do that?
Right.
So you get to have your space exactly as is.
Speaking of your husband, do you think that you ever find everything that you're looking for out of somebody? Like, is that a realistic expectation?
It depends on what your list is. I never had like a running list in my mind of like, these are my non-negotiables. And I hate questions like that almost when people ask me because it feels so limiting. I needed somebody who was financially stable.
I agree.
Because I was not in the position you are now when I was 26. I was making a decent living. I was a real estate agent in the city. I was a struggling actress, and I did real estate because it afforded me the opportunity to audition because it's flexible.
Gotcha.
So I was doing fine.
Okay.
But I was like, I cannot support a family off of my income. And I don't know what my life is going to look like. I was a creative. And so it was not so much about, I want a guy to take me on vacations. I was like, if I'm going to have a family, I cannot subject my future children to this instability that is my life. Like, my husband at least needs to be stable.
Yeah.
And I will provide a lot of other things. Like, we have a fairly traditional relationship in the sense that obviously we both work now and we're both contributing financially, but I am still primarily the CEO of the house, like a lot of women are. So my thing was, I need him to be financially stable. I need him to be very family oriented. And those were kind of like, I'm very, very close with my parents. And I'm like the daughter of immigrants. So like I've said to my husband, I don't ever want to put my parents in a nursing home. So if it ever comes to the point that they can't live on their own one day, hopefully very far into the future, they're moving in.
Yeah.
Or we're building, a guest house or something if we're lucky enough to have the means to do that. It's like, they're not going because that's not like our culture. And like I see it as they raised me when I was like incapacitated as an infant. If and when it comes time to do that, and it may never happen. I mean, my grandfather lived on his own until the last day.
Wow.
He had help in the end for sure, but
course.
he was 95 living in his own apartment. He was never in assisted living. I knew those were my two qualities. And beyond that, I was open. And I think on paper, you wouldn't understand why my husband and I mesh because we come from very different backgrounds. But like we have the same values and those values are what's important. And so, I would love to know what your core values are because for me, I think the reason why we've worked so well, we're both weird in the same way. We are both very, very into our careers. So that's why, and we've waited to start a family because we're both not like, it would be really problematic if I was really into my career and I wanted to wait to have a kid and he was like, no, I want to be a dad today. So that's, I think, more important is that you're both weird in the same way. When you think about it, because you were in such a long-term relationship with Francesco, which we need to go back and we will dive into that. But what are your values and where do you see your life more so in 10 years and how does a partner fit into that?
All right. So, and I think I'm exploring this as I go right now too. So
I forget you're so much younger
hold
than
space
me,
for me here.
which is amazing because
I
you
love
have
it.
such an old soul. But
Do
like
I?
you do.
Okay, good to know.
Y'all, she's 26 and I am 33. And it's like, I remember being 26 and I did not have my shit together.
All right, I'm going to tell you what comes to mind. So I am a person that really values like my goals and my career and like what I do. And I think I would love a person that has that drive in themselves, whatever that is. And I think that I want to be so important to him, but I also want himself to be, if not just as important, like neck and neck or a little bit less than. I just want him to like care deeply about himself as well. And I don't know if that sounds weird.
No. You want him to have his own thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want like from Monday to
want a
Friday.
boss.
While I'm going here, he's like, perfect, because I'll be here. And obviously, when you think children, as I'm speaking right now, I'm like, ooh, like how would this work?
Yeah.
But I'm sure, I guess when we get there, things would change. But I guess like at the core, that's who they are. And like we'll obviously make those adjustments as like we evolve. But that's something very important. I also really family oriented as well. A true ride or die, like if I'm sick or if something, you're there. Like, how many people said to me when Francesco was sick, like I honestly like at this age, like I would have left. I just wouldn't have been able to do it. Like that, I like hold space that like, that some people just can't. But I was like,
You couldn't imagine doing that, can you? Like,
because I would hope somebody would be there for me. Like truly like ride or die. Like there till the end. Like you love somebody so much that like just like true love. I wonder if like in our generation, like we're like losing sight of like what that really means.
I think a little bit because I think we think of relationships so much as it's almost like a business transaction now. When you ask me, it's like, did you get everything you wanted or do you think it's possible to get everything you wanted? It's like, you could draw up the perfect man, but at the end of the day, the perfect person, it's a feeling. It's not so much a list. I think we are losing it a little. And I think maybe because we are spoiled for choice now, that's why, because we have so many options, right?
Yeah.
Before it used to be who's in your community, who does your mom or your friend know, and then who can you meet at a bar on a Friday night. Now, I could go meet 1,000 guys with the swipe of an app, and that fucks with you.
It does.
You know?
It does.
So now I want to switch gears a little, and I want to talk about Francesco. To people listening who are not aware of your story, can you just take us back?
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. So there was this boy who was at my dance studio, and his name was Francesco. He was the break dancer. So around the age of like 11 or 12 years old, he was like the popular guy of the studio. And like I said earlier, I was not one of the best dancers there. So I was a little bit intimidated, but I had a little crush on him. And I was definitely not seen by him because he was with all the girls that dance better. He ended up leaving the dance studio because of grades in school, and like he wasn't able to balance both. And I was like, well, this sucks, because like not only did I not get to like properly like introduce myself, but I probably won't ever see him again. So at a very young age, I was like, oh. And years go by, 4 or 5 years, and my best friend is like, just starts high school, and she's like, there's this hot guy everybody's talking about, and she's like, his name's Francesco, and I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, that name sounds so familiar.
There's like not that many people named Francesco.
Right? I'm like, wait a minute, like this is ringing a bell. Like,
right.
what's the odds it could be him? So I tell her I'm gonna come pick her up from school just to go see him, and I run into him, and he's like, I feel like I know you. I'm like, oh, no way. Like,
you're like,
totally
I
set
have
it
no
up.
idea, but like
Yeah.
I know you.
Yeah, but you don't even know that. But
Yeah.
we just, from there on, we got into a relationship at 15, and we were high school sweethearts. We had a beautiful relationship while we were in high school. He was like very popular. I was a little bit more, I didn't have time for like a social life. So it was like school, dance, homework, bed, school, dance. Like he was like school, chilling, cool guy, like hanging out after hours. So I was like, he was like my world. And I don't think I was necessarily his just because he had so much going on. But, you know, he really valued me. He would come over and pick me up from dance all the time. But when I went to college, I went away to Florida. I asked him, like, do you want to do long distance? And he was like, yeah, like, I don't want to lose this. So when I went away to college, and now he didn't go to college, but he was working. What happened is no longer was I a girl with this tight schedule. I'm a girl with like one class a day, and like life is different.
College is easier than high school. I thought it was because high
is.
school is all about getting into college, and then you get into college and you're like, I have nowhere to go after this,
Yeah.
so it's fine.
It was crazy. I was like, holy shit. Like, I don't have to do a whole day of classes. Like,
Yeah.
what? So we would just all meet up and go on boats. Like, this is Florida. And he was like, what is going on out there? And like, slowly but surely, it went from now, instead of him being the popular guy after school, he was just working all day. And now I turned into the girl where like I was his whole world, and now he wasn't necessarily mine. And it kind of switched, and he wasn't used to that. We ended up breaking up because trust issues, and he just like saw so much going on.
That's young. It's such a young age.
It was.
You know?
We were both kind of just on different paths at that time, and it just wasn't working. But we broke up, and because he cheated. He thought I was doing something wrong. And so he
cheated because he thought you were cheating?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. That's a lot to unpack, but yeah.
That is, I know.
Because he was like, you know, it's like, it's almost sad because it's like he probably didn't want to cheat, but he thought you were cheating because you had all these options
He
now.
had this motto where it's like, you always cheat first before they do, so it doesn't hurt so bad.
Oh.
And it's like,
it's a defense mechanism.
And I was so confused if we really want to I was going to just like brush through it, but I was very hurt because when like somebody's so convinced that you're doing something that you're really not, how do you change that?
I know.
I literally I would sit there and beg him to believe me, but you just can't. You just like, this is your
That's a him.
world.
That was a Francesco insecurity thing that he needed to figure out.
Yeah.
And I think it's tough because he was Mr. Popular. It's like he didn't have to try growing up. And now all of a sudden he has to try. And so, you know, maybe to somebody else, they would have been like, yeah, this is just life. But to him, it's like, wait, I'm not used to this. So, you know, we do immature things when we're young. You guys were so young. That makes sense. How did you find out that he cheated on you? Did he tell you, or did he let you find out because that was probably the goal, to make you jealous a little bit?
That would have been nice. No, it was the complete opposite. I saw that he was struggling with the distance, and I saw that he was struggling with how, like, she's doing all these cool things. Like, how can she still love me the same? Like, she does. That's why, like, I'm insecure. Maybe she's cheating. So I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to book a surprise flight home for Valentine's Day to surprise him, to show him that I've cared all along. And, you know, so I get home and I show up to his door and he was so happy, a little bit off, but very happy. And he's like, I have this Taekwondo, because that's what he did at the time. He's like, I have a show in Times Square tomorrow, like, come. And I was like, of course I'm gonna come. Like, I'm here for the weekend, Valentine's Day, we'll do whatever. So I go to this show and he's like, can you record the performance for me in the audience? So I'm like, yeah, so give me your phone. So I take his phone and I'm sitting in the audience waiting for him to go on. It's like this whole karate performance. Right. I'm like, what is going on? He's breaking things with his head. I'm like, okay. Oh. But if you love it, no problem. But I just, the music wasn't working. I don't know, it was like meant to be, like the whole show was just delayed. And I'm sitting in the audience with his phone, like waiting to record it. And I'm like, eh. So I go through his phone and I'm like, oh, there's no girls. I thank God. But it's always with the boys, him and his conversation with the boys. And he's just like texting his friend. He's like, I feel horrible. She flew here and I like did this with the so-and-so and like I just feel horrible. They're like, this is not good, bro. What do I do, kind of thing. And I was just so heartbroken because I already flew all the way this long of a way.
And when you're in college, you have like no money to begin with, so a flight's very expensive.
Right, everything, just all the effort and just the idea of like hurting so bad that like somebody was so convinced of something that just simply wasn't true. It just
wasn't your
So I'm like, now what do I do? I'm in New York, you know, I just did all this. He's cheated. I'm sitting in the audience. He's about to go break bricks with his head. Like, what am I doing here? So I'm like, you know what? Let me wait.
Should have thrown a brick at him, right?
Literally. So I'm like, let me wait for the performance to be over. He does it. And I go backstage and he's like, did you get it on the camera? I said, no. Hand him his phone. I was like, I don't even know what I said. Something like, I'm going to go home.
Yeah.
And he knew. He said, I didn't do anything. I'm like, I didn't even say anything. Like, right
that's
away.
When you knew.
Yeah. So he ended up telling me that he just told his boys that he cheated to look cool. So I left the relationship with no closure at all and just trusting my gut that that was not the truth, that he definitely did cheat.
Either way, it's bad.
I know,
It's like either way sucks, by the way. Yeah. You don't look like a better person if you lied about cheating versus,
So we broke up. A year goes by. And it was hard to like kind of move forward from that breakup without, because he was like saying like, all right, if you leave this relationship, that's on you for thinking, you know, leaving for a lie. So really tried as hard as to gaslight the situation. So,
dude, not cool. Because you were the one who fucked up. Don't put this on me.
I know. You know? It was really, he didn't do the right thing by me, you know, at all. And a year goes by and he calls me. He's like, hey, I would love to meet up. I heard you're home for the holidays, you know, from Florida. In person, if you're okay with that. And I'm like, oh, finally, I'm getting that. I'm sorry, because they always come back. I always do. I'm like, this is perfect. And when I got in the car to meet up with him, he just looked different. And I didn't really understand why. And this is when he was like, listen, this is crazy. I don't even know what this means, but I'm just letting you know I got diagnosed with cancer. Took his hat off. He was bald. He said, if there's anything that I do, because I don't know what's going to happen to me, I'll never forget this. I just want to let you know that I did cheat on you and I'm sorry. Like, that was like his, like, I need to make sure, like, if I pass, that we're at least okay. You know,
and that you got that. It's almost like he was like, you know what? I need to give you closure.
Yeah. And from there, that version of him, he just grew so much. I mean, that completely, it could really make you into, you really get what life's about, you know, and it really just shaped him. And we didn't get into a relationship till years after. I always wonder, like, if he did not get cancer, if we would have ever been together. Because it really changed him to be such a beautiful person, which sucks that it took for that. And I also always wonder, like, could he have gotten there without this? Perhaps, you know. But we grew up and I got home from college and we gave it another go and it just clicked and it just worked. And we were finally aligned and had similar morals. And that was when we started, just for fun, TikTok on social media.
Right. What year was this?
2020 for COVID.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Yeah, so we just started making funny videos, just like an Italian Brooklyn couple, just being funny. And then he got re-diagnosed. And
so he was in remission at that time.
He was technically in remission, but the reality is it's always one of those things that, for him at least, because like he was in remission, but like not entirely. He was like floating right on the tippy top.
Okay.
it was always like a life that you just need to like, it's a change of life. So you need to make sure you're eating properly and like you don't want to activate anything and like you're very cautious and
he's not
constant
drinking.
doctor, you know, visits. And so it was always like a part of his life and my life while being with him, but it was sustainable. So we could still do everything that we wanted to do as young 23 and 24-year-olds travel. Right. He would just bring his medicine with him. You know, he really tried to fit in, didn't want anyone to know he was struggling with this, just didn't want sympathy, didn't want to talk about it.
He just wanted to live his life.
Just live his life and be happy.
When you got into a relationship with him, were you thinking like, he's going to beat this, he's young? Or was there always in the back of your head, he might not make it?
When it was like sustainable and like we were like living our normal lives, knowing that he had it and he knowing that he had it, I think deep down, it was like, well, I hope that wouldn't happen, but can't. Like, no way. Like, look at our lives. Like, we're like a famous TikTok couple.
I know.
We're in LA, walking carpets. Like, there's no way. Like, that, it's almost like you said with my brother, like, invincibility, like, dying just doesn't sound like a possibility. Like, that's not on the table. That's not up for discussion.
Because you're so alive and you're alive. Living, like,
And so when we did do our LA trip back right before he got not necessarily re-diagnosed because he was always had this cancer, but when we found out that it spread, because it started as testicular cancer, we were in LA for a big work trip, and he was like, my back is killing me. And I was like, it's from the gym. And he was like, I hope so. And I just could tell that he was worried because I think he recognized the pain that I can't even understand to this day what that means. Yeah. But he felt like something similar to what he's had in the past. And he was like, yeah, I hope it's just from the gym. And I'm just always like, come on, like, stop, like, it's fine. We get home from LA and like one day he wakes up in the middle of the night. He's like, this pain is horrible. Like, I got to go to the hospital. Like, I can't sleep. I can't. He was trying so hard to hold it out, hoping this would go away one day, you know, and it just wouldn't. Went to the hospital and they gave him scans and we found out that the cancer out of nowhere just spread in his liver and lungs and main organs. And that was for me the first day where I was like, could it be a possibility that we lose him? You know, like, is this it now?
Yeah.
But when you have that thought, I feel like something like your survival mode like hops you back into now. Can't be like back into denial. And I faced that like maybe not for a really long time.
What's the process of saying goodbye like at that age?
After like so many months of like doing everything that they offered and doing outside research and trying our own things, there was one day very close to a couple weeks after this, he passed, where the doctors were like, hey, like, we did everything we could. There's nothing more we could do. We could set you up with like hospice or, and for us, meaning me and his parents, we were like, and I was super involved as like a caretaker role. They don't know what they're talking about. Like, we'll figure it out. We're the doctors now. Like, just really thinking that we were so deeply in denial. And I remember one day he sat us down. He's like, can you just stop? Please.
Because he had accepted it and everybody else hadn't.
He's like, just enjoy me. And for 2 weeks, just going on and on and on. And one day, like, I don't know what made me surrender, but we were just sitting down and I just saw how much pain he was in. And he could no longer like lay in the bed. Like, he was like scrunched over, like couldn't even sit up anymore. And I sat down on the floor and he was scrunched over and I was just looking up at him. And he was just like, I just knew. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I was like, okay, like, this is it. So, like, I'm done playing this game of what can we do and trying to have nurses come in to give him IVs, vitamin C. I just want to tell you I love you, you know? And, like, it just started, like, this whole chain of, like, here's what I want you to know. And it was kind of interesting because even, like, with the cheating came up and, like, how much, like, he learned. Like, it was just so much stuff that feels like the biggest deal. Like, even like past fights that we would have that we were laughing about in that moment because it's like that was so stupid. Like, true real life conversations that by the time that he took his last breath, I feel like it's just so nice when two people like have peace with it. And it just, when he's gone, you're like, okay. Because like when you watch somebody suffer like the way that he did, like, nothing's worse than that. Like, hopefully there's something better than this because he just can't. It's not sustainable for him. Yeah. It was almost like a sense of peace for everybody.
Because you're like, he's no longer in pain.
Yeah, it was so bad, the pain.
And you've talked about this publicly and you and I have talked about this, but Francesco has shown up for you in so many different ways since he's physically passed. But I think one of my favorite videos of you at a horse race and you were like Don't
Yes.
even. And that like gave me chills because, so for those of you who haven't watched this video, Kaitlin was, and correct me if I'm wrong, at a horse race. And there was a horse that you bet on named Francesco because you were like, oh my God, the horse is named Francesco.
Yeah.
And he was the slowest horse and he was like last place.
Last, like not even last, like in the back, like not even in the race.
Yeah,
anymore.
not even
like,
in the
okay,
race. And you were saying, oh, that's so on brand for you, Francesco, because he was always late.
Always.
Human Francesco was always late. And as soon as you said that, the horse
just like jets, like goes through all the other horses and wins. And like we were just like, it was just crazy too, because whenever I would like tell him in person, you're so slow. He'd get all like pride and ego, like, oh yeah, watch this. And all of a sudden, man's moving like 100 miles per hour. So I'm like, oh, that's how it's going to be, huh? So it just felt like the same thing through a horse.
And
I can't explain it.
You can't tell me that that's coincidence. I refuse to believe. That's so wild.
Also,
to
it's
me.
like all the other horses' names were like not human names. Let alone, like you said, Francesco is not a name you hear.
It was like Sparky.
Right.
Sparky the horse.
Sparky, Pinky, Francesco. What? So I was like, wait a minute, an Italian horse?
The Italian stallion.
Like, literally, what are we talking about here? So it was really crazy. Really.
That's wild. Have there been other instances like that where he's shown up?
I think my second favorite one is that when he was here and I was at his house, I'd have my straighteners, my curling irons, and I would always leave them turned on by accident before we'd leave. And he'd be like, you're going to burn the house down and rip the thing out of the outlet.
Right.
So I have this system now. When I get ready to go out, I do my, I turn the straightener on so it can heat up. I leave it in wherever it is that I put it in. And I go downstairs, I pick an outfit during that time. I come back up, my outfit's on, and I do my hair. So I turn my straightener on and I leave it somewhere. And I go downstairs, nobody's in my house. And the long story short is that when I came back up, it was turned off. It was weird. Like I thought this through. This has been an ongoing discussion in my head. I'm like, I'm like, no. Like I know I turned this on. Not only was it turned off, but it was like moved a little bit, like in a place that like would not go on fire. Like I don't remember the specifics. If you asked me the story like a year ago, I would have it better for you. But it was just like the way that I left it, like the house could have went on fire. And it just when I acknowledged that it was turned off, I like looked up and I just started dying of laughter, like the same way I would when like he would yell at me in person, and like you just know.
That
I feel
was
like,
him.
Yeah.
He was like, girl,
come on.
You are gonna burn this house down.
How many times did I tell you?
You look straight fire, but you are also gonna cause a fire.
Yes, literally.
Yeah. What is your relationship with your faith, spirituality, whatever you want to call it, like since Francesco's passed?
Ooh, I love this question because I'm on this journey right now. So when he first passed, I hated church. I hated God. I just like lost hope in everything because I'm like, there's just no way there's something beautiful after this or somebody out there that's beautiful. When I lost him, he was such a good like why? And then after a while, you surrender because holding hate in your heart does nothing for you. It's not a good feeling. And now I'm on actually a current journey of finding God again. I go to church every Sunday. I have my little Bible that I read. So I'm Catholic and I just want to keep growing that and just finding faith again, truly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I truly think that we're too stupid to be it. And I don't believe in coincidences. I've realized that like God has shown up for me in so many times. I can't deny the timing of my life. Well, so you go every Sunday?
Every Sunday.
That's amazing.
I've been trying.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some days that I'll miss. If I have a night out, sometimes I get a little hungover.
Okay.
I'm like, no, not the Sunday mass, the morning. I can't get up.
Do you go with
horrible.
Would you go with family or do you go alone?
I actually go with Mr. Miracle. He's on this journey with me. So
That's amazing.
We're both Francesco's best friend for context.
You recently started dating again.
I did.
How do you date again after that? And you're still so close with his family.
Yeah. So it's a very complex journey. First things first is not rushing into dating again. So I took a really long time, 2 years, just like learning about myself and like trying to re-identify who I am. Because I think Francesco was my purpose while he was here for so long, especially when he was sick, that it was very important to like understand like, who am I? Because like if I don't know who I am, I can't show up for somebody else or a date or anything like that. But I think that when I really knew that I was ready to date again was when I would finally come to terms with not feeling like I'm cheating on Francesco anymore. I think like when somebody passes on, like you guys don't agree for it to be over. So it's like we're still together.
Right.
It feels like.
Yeah.
So how do I
You're like
finally,
a widow
right.
almost.
So it's like, how do I not feel guilty? How do I not feel like I'm cheating? And I think that just comes with time and like understanding everything, talking it through. I had my podcast where I dive deep into everything that happened, which really helped me find peace. And then one day I woke up, I was like, you know what? Like, I want to give this a try. And if I don't like it, then I don't do it again for a little bit. And I figure out why I didn't like it and work through it. But I just kind of woke up one day. I was like, okay, let's do this. I think when you lose a significant other and like you go 2 years without dating, at a certain point, it's like, I'm going to continue looping like where I am in life if I don't take this next step. And I think it was very important for me to date again to like move forward with the grief and everything. So I just woke up one day. I was like, hey, let's give this a go. And I had a great first experience because the guy was really nice and understood kind of everything that I've been through.
Are you still seeing him, or was it just kind of like I needed to do that, but he wasn't it?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Like I needed to do it. And I felt deep down that it wasn't it, but I was a little bit like, I'm just so proud that I did this. Like I can't imagine like trying this with somebody else. So let's just like stay put for a second and like understand what's going on. But he was just like, hey, listen, this was interesting too. I'm not really like into this whole social media thing and it kind of freaks me out. And he was like, I'm a very like quiet person and like, I just don't know if this is going to work. And I was like,
that's actually very respectable that he said that to you up front.
Yeah. He was just like, I know that you take people on your journey of life and like dating after grief. And it's just like, it's hard. Like, it's just a lot. And I was like, that's okay.
Yeah.
But it was a little bit like, oh, like, do I stop for a second? Like, is everybody going to feel this way? And then I was like, no, like, this is what I do. And like, it was a good little wake up call because me and Francesco did social media together. And I was so used to a man being okay with this because like, that's all we did together. Right. So I was like, okay, I need to go into this remembering like, not everybody's like Francesco. Like, it's another thing, like not comparing, You're
not trying to find Francesco 2.0.
No.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's unfair. And that's another thing that goes into waiting before dating.
Right. So you're not constantly comparing to, well, Francesco would have done this or he would have done that or he would have helped me film content. I never dated when I was in the public eye. By the time I went viral, I was already basically married. And so we kind of figured it out together. Whereas I think it's interesting because I would imagine a lot of men are probably scared that if it doesn't work out,
you're gonna like blast it.
Yeah. Which is not your brand.
Yeah.
And I noticed this when you were talking with your hands. You wear a ring on your left finger.
I know.
And it looks like an engagement ring.
It does.
Is there a story behind that? Or is it you're like, no, I just like this ring?
No, yeah. Francesco got me these 2 rings. And I mean, they were promise rings. I definitely acknowledge that wearing it on my finger can give the wrong impression.
Yes.
Right? Like,
you're probably not going to get picked up at a bar anytime soon.
That's so funny you say it. Like, I just went out with my friend the other day. She's like, you're not going to get picked up at a bar. And I'm like, wait, like, is that true? And and like, it's kind of interesting though, because like, with that being said, I still am like, but I still want to wear this ring right now. So I'm just trying to like give myself grace because like, I'm just not ready to like do that. I don't know why.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
That's also great, by the way, that you're like, you know what? I am not ready and I'm not going to force myself to be ready for the sake of anyone else.
And it's also like, if it does stop somebody from coming up to me, like totally respect it.
Right.
Maybe somebody comes up to me and doesn't recognize it right away. And while we're already talking, if he asks, I can explain. And that has happened and we still move forward for a date and it went amazing. I just feel like what's meant to be will be. I just think that like this is where I'm at and like this is me being authentic to like where I'm at in my life.
Right.
So like what's meant to be for me will like come.
And some people, to be fair, like not everyone notices because depending on the bar and everything, I've been on bachelorette parties since getting married or engaged and like they don't notice because it's dark and you're holding a drink and then I always have to be like, I'm sorry. I know, you're not just asking me to hang, like talking to me to be a friend. I'm married, but like you can then have the conversation where if they come up to you because they don't notice the ring that like, hey, by the way, I'm fully single, but this happened to me.
Yeah.
You had a video recently that I absolutely loved because you were like, I just had this epiphany where you're like, I used to be so worried about fitting into everyone else's life.
Yeah.
And I think obviously we've talked so much about your childhood and like your traumas. Like you were trying to fit into your dad's life. You know, you were trying to fit into this idea of what your mom thought you should be doing. And you were like, I just realized like, you know, this was not an ego thing. It was no hate. I wanted to see this guy. He was so busy. He was like, let me see where I can fit you into my schedule. And you were like, you know what? I looked at my schedule and I can't fit him into mine. I was like, you know what? Don't bother. That is so cool.
Yeah, it is.
That is so cool
wow.
that you're like, I'm too busy to see you, you know, this week. So like, let's not even try
don't
this
even
week.
worry, yeah.
Yeah,
Honestly.
don't worry. And I still think this is the case. So often we're kind of just waiting to be picked.
Right.
You know? And you're
Which,
like,
by the way, because I have like a similar sometimes vibe. Like in that video, it's more like
empowerment.
Yes, empowered woman. And like the guys attacked me. Like you were saying, like, I gotta, what's up with, why are they so mad when like a woman like shows up and says like, hey, I'm busy. There's like, no, you're not. Like, what can you be busy doing? Getting a coffee? I'm like, wow. Like it's so intriguing.
Hey, if you could make money getting a coffee, wouldn't you too?
Yeah. Right?
No. It's so funny because I never thought I was a controversial person when I first started making content.
Did I
was like, I'm just empowering women because I felt disempowered and I felt disenfranchised for so much of my life. But I think what it is like there's a subsect of very insecure men in real life where they feel empowered online because there's the anonymity of it. And they think by tearing you and me down that they will find their empowerment, right? They're angry because they could never get you. You wouldn't even want to fit these men into your schedule, girl. It's
You're right. You're right.
So that's what it is. It's like, you know what? I can't have it, so I'm going to reject it. Maybe it's a little bit like what Francesco did when he first cheated on you. He was like, because I can't have her in the way I want to, I'm going to reject her first. Yeah. It's just immaturity. And a lot of people are like that. Wow. And they feel like that's how they can deal with the hate and the feelings of insecurity. But wait, did you ever see that guy? Did you guys figure out a schedule? Or
yeah, we did. I was
did?
like, wait. I feel like I'm like the bachelorette of my life right now.
Right.
Yes, we did. We had a great date. Watched the Knicks game.
Oh,
nice. It was fantastic.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Will there be another date, you think?
Yeah. Oh. I'm still trying to figure out, like, here's my thing. Like, I'm in a place where I am dating, but I also, like, I'm not really, like, running for a relationship. I really would prefer to not be in one right now, like, during, like, this self-discovery time. And I just, like, wonder, like, okay, like, you get to, like, the fifth date, it's like, okay, how many dates are we going to go on? And then it's like kind of like the conversation of like, is this going anywhere? So it doesn't
have to be. It doesn't have to. Yeah. It could be anything you want it to be.
Okay. I just feel bad. I'm like, am I wasting everybody's time?
No. I mean, here's the thing. This is like, I think we have to think about dating as the trial phase for marriage. If marriage is the end goal, monogamy and traditional relationships. So I always think like you should not feel bad for dating. I mean, look, if you knew the answer, you should only feel guilty if you were like, I don't like this guy. I don't want to date him, but I'm using him for something right now in my life because he fills a void or like whatever. I just want to be taken out, which like we know you can take yourself out. So we are all good there.
Right.
I think you are allowed to explore. That's the dating phase. It's the exploratory phase. And I think we as a generation have become so non-committal because, again, we're spoiled for choice. So we feel like we have to make the right choice because we have so many choices. But the thing is, you don't know what the right choice is until you figure it out, until you live it.
You're right.
Right?
Yeah.
So you're not wasting his time because you don't know. You think ideally you don't want a relationship right now, but you don't know. I mean, you could date him for another 3 months and realize, wait a second, like I actually do want a relationship with you.
I agree with that.
You know, but you won't know until you get there. So many things have to be lived in order to be, you know, understood. Yeah. You couldn't have known what would happen with Francesco in the beginning.
That's true.
So you shouldn't feel guilty because, trust me, men do not feel guilty about taking their sweet-ass time deciding whether they want to commit to women. Also, I think on a separate level, you should not assume that, like, he's pressuring you. You know, he's figuring it out, too. You're getting to know each other. So I think when we try to jump too much into the future, it's like we forget to live in this moment, and the moment informs the future.
Were you dating more than one person ever at one time? Like, putting yourself out there? Like, have you ever had a phase like that?
In the introductory, I never had more than one relationship at a time. So when it got serious enough to be like the what are we talk.
Okay.
But I would date multiple men, like the first 3 to 5 dates all at the same. I mean, I
Okay.
was crazy. Like,
I feel crazy. I'm like, what am I, the Bachelorette?
Oh yeah, no, it's like you. And you know what? I'm so glad I did that. Like I had moments in my 20s where I was going on like 3 new dates a week: Thursday, Friday, Saturday. New guy, new guy, new guy.
Gotcha.
And it gets exhausting.
It
but
does.
It's like
It does.
at some point you stop or you recalibrate or you find the one guy that does break through the noise. When I
so
met
true.
Dave, my husband, I had just gone out on a date with a guy that had asked me out. He was a client of mine, actually.
Oh, wow.
And he'd asked me out after I rented him an apartment. And I was like, oh, this guy's like really cute. And like I had a really great connection and he was like very like witty and everything. And then once I started dating Dave, it became very quickly apparent after about a month that other relationship was like, I'm sorry, I can't.
Wow.
So when you know, you'll know, which
Okay,
is
that's good to
so, overused. But if you can't decide between like 3 dudes,
then none of them. Wow.
None of
Very
them.
good to know.
Right?
Love that advice.
You will know. Just like you knew with, when you said, I graduated from college, something had changed. I just knew.
Yep.
This is it. This is my person.
Yeah.
Do you have like a rejection in particular that you always remember and you're like, thank God that happened. Like, thank God I got rejected by this man or this business opportunity or I didn't get this role because I wouldn't have the life I have right now if I had been accepted.
All right. So there's 2 things that come to mind. I would say one of them is definitely getting cheated on because like it really like taught both of us so much. But I would say the more important one is that going away to college, I wanted to go to Juilliard here for acting or just like there were so many at the time. I Rutgers, Purchase.
Tisch, anything like that, yeah.
All like the acting schools. I got rejected from every single one because of my grades or my SAT. And
Just
my last choice.
Your SAT has nothing to do with
sucked.
your ability to perform.
I literally don't even know why I prep monologues because like they're like, oh, SAT, sorry. I'm like, okay, then why am I here? But whatever. FAU was my last choice, the college in Boca. I did not want to go to college in Florida. It's not known for acting. I'm like, I'm in New York. What am I doing? And my mom's like, look,
you got to go to college.
Right?
So.
Or like you go to like a community college by the house. And I was like, I guess I'll try Florida. It was scary. It's, so far away. But that getting rejected from every college, I was crying. I was so miserable. I'm like downplaying like how horrible it felt. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. It entirely shaped me. It showed me, like I said, that there's more than just, there's more out there in life and just a different lifestyle, finding myself, being on my own, like navigating a new state and new people and just a whole new life. It really made me who I am today entirely. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming here today and sharing everything. Where can people find you on social media?
All right. Kaitlin_Reagan. KAITLIN_REAGAN. Thank you so much for having me on here. And you inspire me as much as you say I inspire you. So thank you so much for your videos.